Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel, and let's hop right into me showing you how to make your paintings just a little bit better. First, I'd like to make a note about my brushes that I'm using in this painting. I will put everything in a link in the description, including my transparent brush settings that I'm getting from Medsmap, Ahmed Aldori. His stuff. I'll put that in the description. Also, the gradient map I use here to color the skin of the face, I'll put that in the description as well. So before we get started here, I think the most important thing about any painting, and this painting is no exception, it's about values, getting your values correct. And I'll talk more about that as we go along. I also plan to fast forward all of the in-between parts. If you would like, I will eventually post a longer version. The full painting here, the full process was over 3 hours. But I am shortening that down for brevity. So most people, I think, these days start their paintings off with several layers of drawing. You do a very rough sketch, then you come back, make a new layer, lower the opacity of the first layer, and make a second, more accurate sketch over top. I know Aaron Blaise does that, many others do. But there are some people who love to get right to painting, right? And there's nothing wrong with either way. But I think as a beginner, it definitely helps to sketch out your drawings first. But don't be afraid. As you can tell by my first drawing here, it's absolute dog shit. And it's okay to be dog shit. When you're a digital artist like we are, you have a lot of tools at your disposal to fix it once it's down. The key is to get it down first, then take a look at it, maybe flip it, and then you can go from there. You can use the liquify tool, which we'll see. You can use what is it called? The move tool. You know, select a particular area, like you'll see here that I do with the lips later on, where you can select the lips, make them bigger, one side smaller. Many things you can do, even the redo button. Speaking of the devil, here we go. There's a case in point. So I try to sketch these lips several times, and I'm just not happy with them. I think it's really hard to sketch male lips because you don't want them to look too full. And here I eventually end up painting a box to help me with perspective, because the right side of the lips are going to be a little bit smaller than the left side. It says it's the same way with his eye. The right eye is slightly smaller because it's in perspective. And this can really help you draw some, for instance, curved lines around the head to make the lips curve around the body, not make them look flat. But many times you can draw these boxes where one side will be smaller, the other side will be larger. And then what you can do is grab the select tool and the move tool, and you can manipulate the lips to make them just right. You can also get in there again with liquify and move them around as well. So the world is your oyster when it comes to digital painting. Also, before I forget, the music that I'm playing here in between my talking sessions is by Windows 96, who gave me special permission to use his music in this video. So I want to give him a shout out. The album that these songs come from is called 100 Mornings. So a very special thank you to him. By the way, this is Batman 1989 by Tim Burton. And you can see here, it's very interesting, and this is one of the reasons why I love this version of Batman so much, is that you can see that on the right cheek there, there's a thickness to the mask itself. You can also see it in the eyes in some parts of the movie scene. And I think a lot of our superheroes, especially in comic books today, they're just not just skin tight, but there's no thickness to the suit at all. And those little tiny details that you put in to your paintings can go a long ways. Also, too, I wasn't really interested in making the bat symbol very accurate. I was going to mostly cover it up with shadow anyways. So there are parts of your painting that you don't necessarily want the eye to draw to, that you can leave large pieces of detail out. And that's perfectly fine. Here I'm experimenting with light, and you'll see that I darken the background and then just use the eraser tool to erase out just a little bit to give me an idea of where I want the light to be, because I want some dynamic light. You can study a lot of modern artists today. Again, Aaron Blaise is a great example of this, where he'll do this thing where he will darken one portion of the painting, usually, the back end of a wolf, say, and then draw light down. And now I'm going to paint over top of this, but that light will give me a good idea of where I can put my highlights in. So it's a nice marker. It doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And that's another great thing with digital art, is you can create layer after layer, press the redo button, delete, erase things. It's just such a nice medium. I think many artists too like to start their paintings in black and white. And like I said earlier, the most important part of your painting by a mile is the values. And if you don't understand values and how that works, that's fine. But I would suggest highly that you do some research into it. I will make some videos, so like and subscribe shortly, about values. It's one of the things I'm most interested in now. But I do like to start my paintings in black and white. And only after I get the values right do I add color, because the values are the most important thing. I can't say that enough. If your values are wrong, your painting will look muddy, it'll look dirty, it'll look flat. And you'll see here in a minute that even without color, the moment you start adding a few different values, like how we're going to do the suit here in a minute, the whole thing just pops. Here it is convenient most because of the color of the costume is black anyways. You can think of value as how much white and black is in a given color. Once you get that right, your paintings will look three-dimensional, even in the absence of color, like I said. When we paint anything, we are actually painting light. And light has three characteristics: the hue, the color of the object, value, which we discussed, and saturation, how much of the color is there. You can get color and saturation wrong, but if the value is wrong, the painting, again, will look flat or dirty. Once all the local color, like I'm doing here, is painted in, then the shadows are painted next. I like to save the bright highlights for last. All right, let's speed this up and get to the next part. I'm using a soft brown brush to reapply some light on the face so I can get a better feel for it. Then I will switch to a transparent brush and lay in the dark shadow areas of the mask. It's a very simple process, and I'll use the transparent brush for this. I don't like to switch around usually a whole bunch of different brushes. Sometimes I'll use a textured brush to get a little texture in there. But I think it's been said a million times, and I'll say it too, that the brushes themselves don't matter as much as the skill of the painter. I try to use about 3 different values per each material. The local color, a much darker version of that color, usually the local color, and then you go halfway to black, as Al Dory says in his Meds Maps course. And then a third color will be a mid-tone that's between that much darker version and your original local color. Keeping the values simple prevents a lot of mistakes, especially as a beginner. And then, of course, because we're painting in black and white, we take the hue and saturation out, which makes it very easy and very simple to create a painting that has a very good base. I'm adding the midtones here and trying to keep the same gray, well, black, consistent across the suit, or the same 3 values. I stick with one dark, one mid, and one light tone until the very end, as I've said before. And then, after that, at the very end of the painting, I'll usually add my highlights. On the skin, there'll be 3 separate values because the skin is a different material than the suit itself. All the materials and even the different colors that are on a particular material will have to have their different values. I'll explain this more later, or perhaps in another video. It doesn't really apply here since the suit is all one color and the lips are all one color. Before using a gradient map on the face, you will still have to establish the values first. One local color, as I've said, one darker color, and then a color in between. The gradient map will then use those values to place the skin tones correctly. Actually, the gradient map will literally just, map all the gray colors to skin tones, whichever one that you choose. Again, the link to the gradient map that I'm using is in the description. I can't remember the guy's name. I'll put it in the description, but that guy is a genius, and I've never had trouble painting skin since using those gradient maps. But also remember that when you're using a gradient map, like for instance, if we were to map this whole, well, let's say all of Batman with one gradient map, which you could do, you'll have to set the layer to a blending mode, particularly either soft light, hard light, or overlay. That way, your values will stay the same, and we'll see this when I apply color to Batman's suit, well, and to his face. But we'll use an overlay so that the values, the shadows and the lights, will stay there. Because if we just grabbed a color and started painting, it would literally paint over everything, and all the value work that we did would be lost. I'll say that again later on in the video and hopefully get it across better then. Again, notice that there are only 3 gray tones on the skin and only 3 on the suit. That's intentional. The painting already feels 3-dimensional, so adding color will quickly make it look like it's finished. Really, truly, you can get the final product very, very close to being done just in grayscale. Adding the color feels like the dessert in a way. And then the highlights on top of that, just makes it pop. But the brush that I'm using, I like to, as you can see up at the top left, the strength, I like to turn it down a lot of times. It can be too powerful. And I like to come in and slowly change the values I feel like a lot of times brushes are too strong. But at the same time, if you use a brush that's too light, you'll notice that your paintings will become blurry. And if that happens, all you have to do is turn the strength all the way up, shrink your brush a little bit, and get in there and make some straight edges. Very important. I have found this very annoying when I first started digital painting. I would do all these cool paintings, worry about the light, and then zoom out, and the painting just looked very blurry. Remember, if that happens, just shrink down your brush and get in there and make some straight lines. So here I'm adding that third tone, that middle tone, to the mask. Maybe even a little bit of a highlight because it's lighter than the other two colors. So, because the face is where I want the viewer's eye to go. So that's where most of the detail belongs. I prefer a slightly unfinished, painterly look rather than spending hours noodling in every detail. And I think a lot of artists feel that way. So that's why I'm going to put the light on the face as well. Another thing you can do, I don't really do it here, but you can blur out a lot of the details, like the shoulders. We could have done that at the end of the video. As painters, we can literally change where our viewers are looking by the amount of blur as opposed to straight, hard edges, like around the mask, how hard and precise those edges are. That tells the viewer that that's the focal point and that's where we want to look. At this stage of the painting, I'm not really concerned with the suit. Most of it will end up in the shadows anyways. You could spend a lot of time here measuring out, getting that bat symbol just right. But my main focus here is the mask and the face. I want to make it look like the actor, and I want the mask itself to be accurate. So it's up to you how much accuracy you want in your painting. But for me, this is just an experimental painting where I'm just trying to get that mask to feel right. All right, here comes the magical liquefied tool, the only reason that we paint in Photoshop. I noticed the face was a little too narrow, actually. Redraw the whole thing? Hell no, bro. Just hit Control plus X plus Shift. Control plus X plus Shift on Windows. If you use a Mac, well, you'll have to look it up. It's not my fault you bought a Mac. But the liquefy tool is amazing. I think I overdo it here just a tiny little bit and make his bottom jaw a little bit fat. But I don't know. Also too, I noticed that the, I don't know if you call them antlers, no, they're ears, bat ears. They look like they're leaning a tiny bit forward, and you probably noticed earlier in the video, I did try to straighten them out a little bit. I didn't like that look. His head's supposed to be leaning forward slightly, but I kind of like him like that. So I just leave it. I'll let you judge. All right, color, the thing that you've all been waiting for. When you finally start adding color, use a blending mode layer like overlay, soft light, or hard light. If you just paint color on top, like I mentioned before, you will screw up your values and waste all of your time. You see how, like, as I'm painting this blue here, how it still looks like there's shadow in there. And that's because the overlay blending mode, I'll put a little arrow pointing to where it's at, is actually overlaying our color on top of the grayscale that we put underneath of it, which means that it's actually changing the color of the blue that we chose while we're putting it in. And that's really important. It makes painting so much easier. So what that means is that we literally went in, fixed the values first, and then just put color right on top of it. If you use the blue first, you would have to worry about all of the values while you're painting with color. And that can be done, and it is fun, and it's not too difficult. But this way, it's just simpler. I like it. I'll probably eventually start painting outside of grayscale, because it is its own animal. But for a beginner, man, I don't think you can beat it. I was very resistant with painting in grayscale at first. I thought it was cheesy or cheating or whatever. But for learning purposes, I don't think you can beat it. Also, I'd like to mention that I didn't mention this earlier, but if you're a beginner and you're really trying to figure out how to paint, the tip of learning value painting first is by far the most important. But also, take a piece of, take your reference that you're painting, you're following, and literally trace right over it. Save yourself some time. Why spend 3 or 4 hours trying to draw it perfectly when all you want to do is learn to paint? Like you can see here, my drawing skills suck. So don't feel like you're cheating. Copy it and then put it right into your computer, like drag it right in there, draw right over top of it, hell, even paint over top of it, or turn it into grayscale, then use the color picker, that's the Alt key, and pick you a bunch of different colors and then study how those values change. So blue is the rim light, and in this particular case, it's a very powerful light. Rim lights are very common in paintings. You paint the light side and then there's a secondary light source. That's cool. But here, because I use blue and yellow go really good together. And I've got another blending mode on overlay. You always want to paint over your grayscale in an overlay mode, unless you know what you're doing. But here, only the light itself is getting the treatment. Nothing in the shadows is getting this yellow color. Now, whatever color the light was, if the light was purple, then we could use purple. But blue and yellow go good together. Invincible, anyone? All right, gradient maps, the almighty gradient map. Thank you to Angelarium, he's on YouTube, for showing me the power of gradient maps with his videos. He sells some badass gradient maps you can find on his channel. Look him up. But make sure when you do your gradient maps that you set it to overlay, your layer to overlay. That way it maps around it and keeps your values. You could map this whole picture with a gradient map and it would change the nature of the colors completely. But here we're just using it to color the skin, which I put, again, a link in the description of the particular gradient map that I use here. But so after we use the marquee tool to select this whole area, we'll go down like I'm doing here, click gradient map, and it will pop up as 100%. And in the properties window, I'm choosing which one, and then I go back to the layer and I make the opacity, turn it way down, and bam, just like that, you got you some skin. Now we can add highlights, you know. Also too, there's a useful tip is that, I'll do it here in a minute, but you can take a little bit of red and place it around the shadows of the skin. It's called subsurface scattering. It makes skin look more alive instead of plastic. And then once I put the red down, as you'll see here in a few minutes, I take a mixer brush and mix the two together. Looks really good. But you know, subsurface scattering happens on lots of things where light can penetrate down through the skin, such as oranges and apples, you know, things like that. Yeah, so right here's that subsurface scattering right along the edges where that shadow meets the light. We put just a little bit of red. Now I think I overdo it here a little bit. You don't have to put it around the light itself, but just where the shadows themselves. Yeah, like right there, I don't think it's necessary, but you can use a mixer brush, mix them in. It's very nice. So I think a very underrated tool is the smudge tool. A lot of people use the smudge tool to mix stuff together, blending. But it can also be used to do what I'm doing here, where you can make it look like there's some scratches or imperfections in the suit. And if your marks are too strong, just turn down the strength, which is up in the top left-hand corner. You can see it there. You can also use it to make hair, which is really cool. I also use it to put the crease in the lips and around the eyes, as you can see. It's a tiny little detail, but don't forget about the smudge tool. Just like Ross Draws loves to do, I save the best for last. Create you a new layer, select the blending mode as color dodge, and you can get in there and make things pop. I think right there was enough. I'm pretty sure I overdid it, but I mean, you'll see for yourself when you start doing it that it's really easy to overdo it. You can also use a very soft brush here to get a very nice effect. But I want to state again that you can really, really overdo color dodge if you're not careful. But notice that the color dodge that I used is the color, you use the color that you want. So here I chose yellow because the light itself is yellow. And it's very handy. Well, thank you very much if you made it to the end. I had a lot of fun. Please like and subscribe. I'm going to make a lot more videos, particularly about values. This was more of an overview. I want to get in there, really push the process, show you exactly how it's done. Here it's more, like I said, just a reason to voice this over a little bit while you listen to some music in the background. But again, I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.